My name is Margaret Collins, and at 58 years old, I stood in the middle of my empty living room with tears running down my face while my entire life crumbled around me. What hurt the most wasn't losing everything. It was hearing my own family laugh about it. They thought I was finished. They thought I'd never recover. And for a while, I almost believed them. My story began in Columbus, Ohio, where I had spent nearly 30 years building a comfortable life. I wasn't rich, but I was proud of what I had accomplished. After my husband passed away 12 years earlier, I raised my 2 children alone. I worked long hours as a small business owner, sacrificed vacations, skipped luxuries, and poured every ounce of energy into creating a future for my family. For years, I believed all those sacrifices meant something. I believed families stood together when life became difficult. I was wrong. Everything changed during one terrible year. The economy slowed down. Customers disappeared. Bills piled up faster than I could pay them. My small home decor store, which had supported me for nearly 2 decades, started losing money every month. At first, I hid my struggles. I didn't want anyone worrying about me. But eventually, the truth became impossible to ignore. I had to close the business. The day I locked the doors for the last time felt like attending a funeral. My dream was dead. Soon after, the financial problems grew worse. Medical bills from a recent surgery drained what little savings I had left. Credit card debt mounted. Collection notices arrived almost daily. Then came the final blow. I lost my house. The house where my children had grown up. The house where I had celebrated birthdays, holidays, and family dinners. The house filled with memories of my late husband. I remember sitting across from my son, Daniel, and my daughter, Rebecca, explaining everything. "I'll figure something out," I said quietly. Neither of them looked concerned. Instead, they exchanged glances. Then Daniel chuckled. A real chuckle. "You should have retired years ago, Mom." Rebecca shook her head. "You always thought you could handle everything yourself." Their words cut deeper than any financial loss. But what happened next hurt even more. A few days later, I overheard them talking at a family gathering in Cincinnati. "Mom's finished," Daniel said. "She'll probably end up asking us for money," Rebecca replied. Then they laughed. As if my pain was entertainment. As if the woman who had spent decades helping them now represented some kind of joke. I left before they saw me. That night, alone in a cheap motel room outside Dayton, I cried harder than I had cried since my husband's funeral. I wasn't crying because I had lost my business. I wasn't crying because I had lost my house. I was crying because I realized I had lost something far more important. The respect of my own family. For weeks, I felt broken, defeated, humiliated. Every morning I woke up wondering if they were right. Maybe I was too old to start over. Maybe my best years were behind me. Maybe this was how my story ended. But then one cold November morning, something happened that changed everything. A single conversation with a complete stranger would force me to make a decision that would transform my life, and eventually make the people who laughed at me wish they never had. The stranger who changed my life wasn't a millionaire, a celebrity, or some motivational speaker. She was a 63-year-old woman named Evelyn Parker. I met her by accident at a small coffee shop in Nashville, Tennessee, where I had stopped during a road trip that was supposed to help me clear my mind. At that point, I had nothing left to lose. My business was gone. My house was gone. My confidence was gone. I was surviving on a tiny savings account and sleeping in inexpensive motels while trying to figure out what came next. As I sat staring into my coffee, Evelyn noticed the stack of paperwork spread across my table. "You look like someone carrying the weight of the world," she said with a smile. Normally, I would have brushed off the comment. But something about her kindness made me open up. For nearly an hour, I told her everything. The failed business, the debt, the house, my children, the laughter, the humiliation. When I finally finished, Evelyn sat quietly for a moment. Then she asked a question that caught me completely off guard. "Why are you acting like your life is over?" I laughed bitterly. "Because I'm 58 and starting from nothing." She shook her head. "No. You're 58 and starting with experience." That sentence stayed with me. Experience. Not failure. Not defeat. Experience. Before leaving, Evelyn shared her own story. At 56, she had lost nearly everything after a divorce. At 58, she started a small consulting business. By 63, she was financially secure again. I stopped focusing on what I lost, she told me. I focused on what I still had. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life proving my family right. I was going to prove them wrong. I rented a small apartment in Knoxville, Tennessee. It wasn't fancy. The furniture was mostly secondhand. The kitchen was tiny, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was moving forward instead of backward. I began searching for opportunities. Years of running my store had taught me valuable skills: customer service, marketing, inventory management, budgeting, and business planning. Skills I had spent decades developing. Instead of seeing myself as a failed business owner, I started seeing myself as someone with knowledge others could use. I launched a small online consulting service for local retail businesses. The beginning was rough. Many days I questioned myself. Many nights I stared at the ceiling wondering if I was making another mistake. But I kept going. One client became two. Two became five. Five became 10. Within a year, my income exceeded what I had been making before my store closed. Then something even more surprising happened. People began recommending me to others. Business owners respected my advice because I had lived through both success and failure. I understood challenges most consultants only talked about. Meanwhile, my family barely called. Months would pass without hearing from Daniel or Rebecca. At first, their silence hurt. Then, I realized something important. Their approval wasn't necessary for my success. For the first time in my life, I stopped living to earn recognition from people who only valued me when I was useful to them. I started traveling again. I rebuilt my savings. I invested carefully. And slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt my life. 2 years after losing everything, I was standing in front of a beautiful house in Franklin, Tennessee. Not because someone rescued me. Not because I won the lottery. Because I refused to quit. As I signed the papers, I felt tears filling my eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of victory. The woman who had cried alone in that motel room was gone. A stronger version had taken her place. But I had no idea that the biggest twist in my story was still ahead. Because the same family members who laughed at my downfall were about to show up at my door with a problem they never expected, and what happened next would leave them speechless. The day they needed me. 3 years after I lost everything, my life looked completely different. The consulting business had grown beyond anything I imagined. I owned a beautiful home in Franklin, Tennessee. My savings account was healthy. I had clients across several states. Most importantly, I had regained something money could never buy: my self-respect. The woman who once cried herself to sleep in a motel room was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and far more confident. Ironically, that was exactly when my family came back. One Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Daniel's name. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 8 months. For a moment, I simply stared at the screen. Then I answered. His voice sounded different. Nervous. Uncertain. "Mom, can we talk?" A week later, Daniel and Rebecca were sitting across from me in my living room. The same children who had laughed when I lost my house. The same children who had predicted I would never recover. Neither of them looked comfortable. Finally, Daniel spoke. His company had downsized. He had lost his job. Rebecca and her husband were struggling financially after a failed investment. Debt was piling up. Bills were overdue. The confidence they once carried had disappeared. For several minutes, they explained their situation. Then came the part one already knew was coming. "Mom," Rebecca said softly, "we were hoping you might help us." The room became silent. I looked at both of them. Suddenly, memories flooded back. The family gathering, the laughter, the humiliation, the motel room, the tears. For years, I had imagined this moment. Part of me wanted revenge. Part of me wanted them to feel exactly what I had felt, to hear the same words they once said to me, to watch them experience the same pain. But as I looked at them, I realized something important. Success hadn't changed me. It had revealed who I truly was. And I wasn't them. I took a deep breath. Then I said something they never expected. I'm willing to help. Relief immediately appeared on their faces. But I wasn't finished. I'm willing to help, I continued, but not by solving your problems for you. Confusion replaced their relief. I explained that I would not hand them money. I would not rescue them from every consequence of their choices. Instead, I would help them create a plan. I would teach them the same lessons I learned while rebuilding my own life. I would support them as they worked toward stability, but they would have to do the work themselves. At first, they seemed disappointed. Then slowly they understood. Over the following months, we worked together. I helped Daniel improve his resume and prepare for interviews. I helped Rebecca organize her finances and build a realistic recovery plan. Neither journey was easy, but both eventually found their footing. One evening, after dinner at my house, Rebecca pulled me aside. Tears filled her eyes. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her quietly. For what? For laughing when you were hurting. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she added, "I was wrong about you." A few weeks later, Daniel apologized too. Not because I demanded it, because he finally understood. Life can humble anyone. The people you mock today may become the people you need tomorrow. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on my back porch watching the Tennessee sunset. I thought about the woman who lost everything. The woman whose family laughed. The woman who believed her life was over. If I could speak to her now, I would tell her one thing. Sometimes losing everything is exactly what forces you to discover how strong you really are. My family thought my story ended when I lost my business and my home. The truth? That was only the beginning. And the greatest victory wasn't rebuilding my wealth. It was rebuilding myself.